There are rules in warfare that cannot be broken. One of them, you do not touch a German general. Not in 1944, not in occupied Europe, not when the Third Reich controls the continent from the Atlantic coast to the plains of Ukraine, not when the SS has made it abundantly clear that any act of resistance against German authority will be met with collective punishment. Villages burned, civilians executed, entire communities erased from the map as a warning to everyone who remains. The rule exists for a reason, because the Germans have made an example of it, over and over again, across every occupied territory in Europe, in Poland, in Yugoslavia, in France, in Greece. The message is always the same. Touch one of ours, and we will take 100 of yours. It is not a threat. It is a policy, documented, deliberate, and enforced with mechanical precision. And on the island of Crete, that rule feels especially unbreakable, because Crete is not just any occupied territory. Crete is a wound the Germans have not forgotten. In May 1941, it took the largest airborne assault in military history to take this island. Over 6,000 German paratroopers killed or wounded in the Battle of Crete, a casualty rate so catastrophic that Adolf Hitler personally banned large-scale airborne operations for the rest of the war. The Cretans fought with hunting rifles, farm tools, and bare hands. Women threw rocks from cliff tops. Old men loaded ancient muskets they hadn't fired in decades. The Germans took the island, but they never forgave it, and so the occupation of Crete is particularly brutal. Reprisals are swift. Entire villages are torched for sheltering resistance fighters. The Cretan people live under a boot that presses harder than almost anywhere else in occupied Europe, because the Germans know what these people are capable of, and they are determined to break them before it happens again. The man responsible for enforcing that brutality is General Friedrich Wilhelm Müller. The Cretans have a name for him. They call him the Butcher of Crete. It is not a metaphor. Müller has ordered massacres. He has burned villages. He has executed civilians with the cold efficiency of a man who views collective punishment not as a last resort, but as standard operating procedure. He is the original target. In the spring of 1944, a plan exists, audacious, dangerous, bordering on insane, to kidnap Müller and smuggle him off the island. Not assassinate, not ambush, kidnap, alive. In broad daylight, drive him through his own checkpoints, carry him across the mountains of Crete, and extract him by sea. But on March 1st, 1944, before the plan can be executed, Müller is rotated out of Crete and replaced by a new commanding general. His name is Heinrich Kreipe, and the plan does not die with Müller's departure. It simply finds a new target. They are about to discover what impossible actually looks like. His name is Patrick Leigh Fermor, and in April 1944, he is 29 years old. To understand who this man is, you have to understand where he comes from, because Patrick Leigh Fermor is not a conventional soldier. He is not a product of military academies or a career officer who worked his way up through the ranks. He is something far stranger and far more dangerous. At the age of 18, he walked across Europe, alone, with a rucksack, a volume of Horace's poetry, and almost no money. He started in the Hook of Holland and walked to Constantinople, the length of an entire continent, sleeping in barns, in monasteries, in the homes of strangers who took him in along the road. He learned languages the way other people learn to breathe. German, Greek, Romanian. He could hold a conversation in a dozen dialects before he was 20. By the time the war begins, he knows the Balkans the way most men know their home city. The Special Operations Executive, Churchill's secret organization created specifically to set Europe ablaze, recognizes immediately what they have in this man, not a conventional soldier. Something more valuable. Someone who can disappear into a landscape, who can think and speak and live like the people around him, who can build trust in communities that have every reason to trust no one. They drop him into occupied Crete for the first time in 1942. For nearly 2 years, he lives among the Cretan resistance, moving from cave to cave, from village to village, always hunted, always hiding. He wears Cretan shepherd's clothes. He grows a beard. He carries a shepherd's crook. German patrols pass within meters of him. He does not flinch. In those 2 years, he builds something more valuable than any weapon: a network, a web of Cretan resistance fighters who trust him completely, who call him by his Cretan alias, Mihaly, who would die for him as readily as he would die for them. And it is in those mountains, in those caves, in those long nights planning operations that will never make the history books, that the idea first takes shape. What if they didn't kill the German general? What if they took him? The new target is General Heinrich Kreipe. He has arrived on Crete on March 1st, 1944, to take command of the 22nd Infantry Division, the garrison force responsible for holding the island. He is a professional soldier, a career officer, and he moves with the confidence of a man who knows he is untouchable. Every evening, his staff car, an Opel Admiral, travels the same route, from his headquarters at the Villa Ariadne near Heraklion, along the coastal road, and back into the hills. The same road, the same approximate time. The general's impatience is well known among his own sentries. He does not like being stopped at checkpoints. He does not like delays. His car is waved through without thorough inspection. Leigh Fermor watches the pattern. He reports it to Cairo. And Cairo, after weeks of deliberation, sends a green light. Joining Leigh Fermor on the operation is a fellow SOE officer, Captain William Stanley Moss, 22 years old, charming, reckless, and absolutely unafraid. Where Leigh Fermor is the strategist, patient, cerebral, shaped by years living in the shadow of the occupation. Moss is the action. The two men complement each other in the way that great partnerships always do. They land on Crete by parachute in February 1944. They spend weeks with the resistance, rehearsing the plan, scouting the route, timing the general's movements to the minute. Around them, the resistance fighters who will make this possible: Manolis Paterakis, Georgos Tirakis, Antonis Zoidakis, Stratos Saviolakis, Grigoris Chnarakis. These are not professional soldiers. They are shepherds and farmers, men who have been fighting the occupation since the first German boot touched Cretan soil. They know every path, every goat track, every cave in the mountains above them. They are the reason this mission is even possible. Also operating on Crete is Major Zan Fielding, another SOE officer, another close friend of Leigh Fermor, who has spent months building the intelligence picture that makes the operation viable. His groundwork is invisible in the final story. It is essential to it. By April 26, 1944, everything is in place. The trap is set. The evening of April 26, 1944. The road between Heraklion and the Arcanes district. A T-junction, 9:30 p.m. The night is dark, a sliver of moon. The smell of thyme and sage on the cold Cretan air. Leigh Fermor and Moss stand at the side of the road, dressed in German military police uniforms. Behind them, in the darkness, the Cretan resistance fighters take their positions in the roadside ditches. Everyone is still. Everyone is silent. They have one problem they cannot control. They have rehearsed this ambush for days. They know the general's car, the Opal Admiral with the divisional commander's pennant on the hood. They know the approximate time of his return. What they do not know on this particular night is whether tonight is the night. Several cars pass. Leigh, Fermor, and Moss step into the road each time, torches raised, ready to flag them down. Each time, it is the wrong vehicle. Headlights appear, torches go up, wrong car, back to the shadows. An hour passes, then another. The resistance fighters in the ditches begin to wonder if the general is not coming, if something has changed, if the plan has been compromised. And then, headlights. An Opal Admiral, moving at moderate speed along the road. The divisional commander's pennant catching the torchlight for just a fraction of a second. Leigh Fermor steps into the road. He raises his torch. He signals, "Stop." The car slows. It stops. What happens in the next 90 seconds will determine whether this entire operation succeeds or ends in a firefight that kills everyone involved. Moss approaches the driver's window. He speaks in German. Routine checkpoint. Papers. The driver, Corporal Alfred Fensky, begins to reach for his documents. And then Moss pulls him through the window. In the same instant, Leigh Fermor yanks open the rear door. General Heinrich Kreipe has exactly enough time to register what is happening before multiple pairs of hands pin him to his seat. The resistance fighters pour out of the ditches. The general's mouth is covered. His hands are bound. He is pushed down onto the floor of his own staff car. It takes less than 60 seconds. Leigh Fermor slides into the driver's seat. He puts on General Kreipe's military cap. Moss sits beside him in the front, his United Defense M42 submachine gun hidden beneath a German military coat. In the back, pressed to the floor, General Heinrich Kreipe, commander of the German 22nd Infantry Division, is surrounded by Cretan resistance fighters with knives drawn. Corporal Fensky is bound and left at the roadside. He will survive the war. His is the luckiest outcome of the night. The Opal Admiral pulls back onto the road, and now begins the most nerve-shredding 20 minutes of the entire operation. Heraklion, the capital of German-occupied Crete, a city full of Wehrmacht soldiers, SS men, military police, checkpoints at every major junction, searchlights on the harbor, barracks on every second street, and a black Opal with a German general's pennant on the hood is about to drive through all of it. Leigh Fermor keeps the speed steady. Not too fast. That draws attention. Not too slow. That draws attention too. He knows this city. 2 years in the mountains have not made him forget what it looks like from the inside. The first checkpoint appears. A German soldier steps into the road, hand raised. Leigh Fermor does not slow down. He flashes the headlights, the signal used by senior officers who do not wish to be delayed, and drives straight through. The soldier steps aside. Second checkpoint. Same technique. Flash the lights. Keep moving. The pennant on the hood does the work. Nobody questions a general's car moving through the city at night. And the sentries know Kreipe's reputation. The general does not like to be stopped. Third checkpoint. Fourth. Fifth. In the back seat, Kreipe has been told in precise, quiet German that if he makes a sound, if he alerts a single soldier, the men around him will kill everyone at the checkpoint and drive on. He is a professional soldier. He understands the mathematics of the situation. He stays silent. Checkpoint 6, 7, 8. The outskirts of Heraklion now. The buildings thinning out. The road rising toward the mountains. Leigh Fermor exhales for what feels like the first time since the car stopped. They pass through 22 German checkpoints in total. 22. At the final barrier, the last checkpoint between Heraklion and the open road, a German soldier shines a torch into the car. The light sweeps across the front seat. Leigh Fermor, in the general's cap. Moss, hands hidden under his coat. The pennant on the hood. The soldier holds the light for a moment that stretches into something close to eternity. Then he steps back, raises his hand in salute, and waves the car through. They drive until the road becomes too dangerous for a German staff car to be seen without explanation. They abandon the Opel Admiral near the coast, leaving a letter inside, written in advance, addressed to the German military command, explaining that this is a British military operation, that the general is a prisoner of war and will be treated according to the Geneva Convention, and that the Cretan population had no involvement and should not be subjected to reprisals. Leigh Fermor knows it may not be enough, but he writes it anyway, because he has spent 2 years living among these people. Now the hardest part begins. The mountains of Crete in late April are not a gentle landscape. The White Mountains, the Lefka Ori, and the massif of Mount Ida, known to the Cretans as Siluritis, rise to over 2,400 meters. The paths are steep, loose, treacherous in the dark. The temperature drops to near freezing at altitude, and they are moving with a German general who has not spent the last 2 years climbing goat tracks in occupied territory. But Kreipe does not complain. This detail matters, because it is one of the things that will eventually change everything between captor and captive. The group moves by night. They hide by day, in caves, in ravines, in the deep folds of the mountain landscape that the Cretan resistance has used for years as refuge from German search operations. Food is brought to them by local villagers at enormous personal risk. A single informer, a single slip, a single footprint in the wrong place could end everything. And in the valleys below, the German response is beginning. When General Kreipe fails to return to his headquarters on the night of April 26th, his staff initially assumes a mechanical breakdown, a delay. By morning, when there is still no contact, they begin to understand something has gone terribly wrong. By the afternoon of April 27th, the entire German garrison of Crete is on alert. Approximately 30,000 soldiers are mobilized. Roadblocks on every major route. Patrols sweeping the mountains. The Luftwaffe flying reconnaissance missions over the mountain paths. Search teams moving village to village, demanding information, threatening consequences. The scale of the German response is, in its own way, a kind of tribute. They do not deploy this many men to find a stolen weapon or a downed pilot. They deploy this many men because a German general has been taken, and the humiliation of it demands an overwhelming response. In the caves above, Leigh Fermor and his group listen to the sound of the search. They move at night, when the patrols thin out. They rest by day, huddled in the cold, rationing the food that local villagers risk their lives to bring. The resistance fighters, Patarakis, Tyrakis, Zoidakis, and the others, navigate with the certainty of men who have spent their entire lives on these mountains. They know paths that appear on no German map. They know which villages can be trusted and which cannot. They know where the patrols go, and more importantly, where they don't. General Kreipe walks with them. There is a moment, recorded later by both Leigh Fermor and Kreipe himself, that happens somewhere in those 18 days that neither man ever forgot. They are resting at dawn on the slopes of Mount Ida, Salaritis, the highest mountain in Crete, rising to 2,456 meters, the mythical mountain where, according to legend, Zeus himself was born. The sun is rising over the summit. The snow at the peak catches the first light. The sky turns from black to deep blue to gold. Kreipe looks at the mountain, and he quotes, in Latin, the opening lines of an ode by Horace. Vides ut altastet nivi candidum soracti. You see how Mount Soracte stands white with deep snow. Leigh Fermor, who walked across Europe at 18 with a volume of Horace in his rucksack, finishes the verse without missing a beat. Two men, captor and captive, on the run from 30,000 soldiers, in the freezing pre-dawn light of an occupied island, reciting a Roman poet dead for 2,000 years. Leigh Fermor will later write that at this moment he and Kreipe looked at each other and both understood that the war, for this brief instant, had ceased to exist between them. It is the most extraordinary detail in an already extraordinary story. This is the kind of history that gets forgotten, not because it doesn't matter, but because nobody's telling it. If you believe these stories deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe and like button. Every subscriber helps us keep rescuing these moments from obscurity. The 18 days are not all poetry and shared humanity. There are moments of genuine terror. A German patrol passes within 30 meters of their hiding place. The group freezes, nobody breathes, the patrol moves on. Another night, a shepherd spots them on a ridge. The resistance fighters debate in urgent whispers whether the man can be trusted. He can. But the encounter reminds everyone how thin the margin truly is. Kreipe's feet deteriorate badly from the walking. Leigh Fermor arranges for a local doctor, another man risking his life, to treat them. Kreipe accepts without complaint. Cairo is kept informed through encrypted radio messages. The evacuation plan depends on the right night, the right weather, and the right signal from the vessel waiting offshore. By mid-May, the group has crossed the island and reached the south coast, the remote cliff-edged coastline facing the Libyan Sea, where the German naval presence is thinner and the darkness on the right night is absolute. The signal goes out, and on the night of May 14th, 1944, 18 days after the ambush on the Heraklion Road, HMS Motor Launch, ML-842, a Fermor B-class vessel commanded by Brian Coleman, appears off the coast of Rodakino Beach. A small boat rows out from the shore through the darkness. General Heinrich Kreipe, commander of the German 22nd Infantry Division, is helped aboard. Patrick Leigh Fermor watches from the shore as ML-842 disappears into the night. The mission is complete. The news breaks across German military command in Crete like a thunderclap. Not because the strategic value of one division commander is irreplaceable, generals can be replaced. The 22nd Division will have a new commander within weeks. The occupation of Crete will continue. The damage is of a different kind entirely. It is psychological, it is reputational, and within the corridors of Wehrmacht command, it is devastating. A British SOE officer and a handful of Cretan shepherds, not soldiers, not a commando unit, not an armored force, have walked into the middle of one of the most heavily garrisoned islands in occupied Europe, kidnapped the commanding general, evaded approximately 30,000 troops for 18 days, and extracted their prisoner under cover of darkness. The message this sends to every occupied territory in Europe is impossible to contain. If it can happen in Crete, if even a German general is not safe, then the myth of German invincibility, already badly damaged by the disasters at Stalingrad and in North Africa, has taken another blow from an island that refuses still to accept that it has been conquered. The man who replaces Kreipe on Crete is none other than General Friedrich Wilhelm Müller. The original target, the Butcher of Crete, rotated back onto the island. His response to the resistance is exactly what his nickname promises. The village of Anogia, already a symbol of Cretan defiance, is destroyed on his orders in August 1944, partly in response to ongoing resistance activity. It is the kind of reprisal that Leigh Fermor feared and could not prevent. But the resistance does not break. It never breaks. In Cairo, Leigh Fermor and Moss are received as heroes. Operation Kreipe is quietly celebrated within SOE as one of the most audacious intelligence coups of the entire war. Not for what it achieved militarily, but for what it proved was possible. For what it told the people of every occupied territory, still watching, still waiting, still refusing to believe the rule was truly unbreakable. Kreipe is transported to POW camps in Canada and then the United States, where he will sit out the remainder of the war. He is treated according to the Geneva Convention, exactly as Leigh Fermor promised in the letter left in the abandoned Opal Admiral. He will never forget it. Patrick Leigh Fermor was awarded the Distinguished Service Order for Operation Kreipe. He returned to occupied Crete after the operation because one mission was never enough for a man like him, and continued working with the resistance until the liberation of the island in 1945. After the war, he became one of the most celebrated travel writers and memoirists in the English language. His books, A Time of Gifts, Between the Woods and the Water, Mani, Rumeli, are considered masterpieces of 20th century prose. He settled eventually in the Mani Peninsula of southern Greece, in a house he built with his own hands overlooking the sea. He lived there until his death in 2011 at the age of 96. Greece awarded him the Order of the Phoenix. He was knighted by the British Crown in 2004. The Cretans called him Mihaly until the day he died. General Heinrich Kreipe returned to Germany after the war. He wrote about his experience. He gave interviews. And in 1972, 28 years after the night a torch flashed in his headlights on a dark Cretan road, he agreed to appear on Greek television. Sitting across from him, Patrick Leigh Fermor. The two men, the kidnapper and his captive, now both old, now both grey, now both carrying the weight of everything that had happened between the world they lived in then and the world they lived in now, sat and talked. Kreipe said that the Cretan people had fought with honor, that the resistance fighters who had guarded him in those mountains had treated him with dignity, that Patrick Leigh Fermor, the young British officer who had wrenched open the door of his car on a dark April night, had kept every promise he made. Think about what that means. A German general, a prisoner of war, appearing on Greek television to tell the Greek people that their resistance fighters, the men who humiliated the Wehrmacht on this island, had acted with honor. It is not the ending you would write if you were inventing this story. It is better, because it is true. William Stanley Moss, 22 years old on the night of the ambush, turning 23 2 months later, wrote his memoir about the operation in 1950, Ill Met by Moonlight, later adapted into a film. He died in 1965 at 44 years old, far too young. But his account ensured that the men who made the operation possible, Patarakis, Tirakis, Zoidakis, Saviolakis, Chnarakis, and all the Cretan villagers who brought food and risked their lives for 18 nights in those mountains, were not forgotten. They deserve not to be forgotten. They were not soldiers. They had no uniforms, no ranks, no medals waiting for them at the end. They were shepherds and farmers on an occupied island, doing the only thing that people like them, in times like those, have ever been able to do, refusing to accept that it was over, refusing to believe that a rule, once declared unbreakable, cannot be broken. In April 1944, a 29-year-old British officer stood at the side of a dark road on an occupied island, dressed in a German military police uniform, and waited for a general's car. He broke the rule, and the mountains of Crete, which have seen every empire from the Minoans to the Ottomans come and go, watched it happen. If this story deserves to be told, that like button makes sure more people hear it. One click. That's all it takes. This channel exists because these men deserve better than dusty archives and forgotten files. If you believe their courage matters, subscribe and help us keep digging. Where are you watching from? Comment your city or country. Better yet, what's a forgotten story from your nation's history that needs to be told? We might cover it next. Thank you for refusing to let Patrick Leigh Fermor, Manolis Paterakis, and the resistance fighters of Crete fade into obscurity. They stood their ground on those mountains for 18 days, with 30,000 soldiers hunting them. You made sure history remembers.